They sent their elderly father to a nursing home, only to learn the next day all company shares were in his name and he could fire them. The cool, sterile air of the Northwood Haven Care Facility was a stark contrast to the familiar warmth of Elias Thorne's own home, a home he had meticulously maintained for decades. He sat on the edge of a bed that wasn't his, the silence in the room punctuated only by the distant murmur of voices and the soft hum of the ventilation system. Outside, the engine of his son Silas's gleaming black luxury SUV hummed for a moment longer before fading into the afternoon's quiet. Elias knew, without a single glance, that Silas and Vivian, his daughter-in-law, had already sped away, eager to put this unpleasantness behind them. His heart, usually a repository of quiet yearning and gentle hope, felt like a block of ice, utterly still. A profound, chilling calm had settled over him, replacing the familiar ache of disappointment. It was over. The charade of their affection, the pretense of his value, had finally collapsed. And in that collapse, a new, unforeseen clarity began to emerge. Silas had assured him, with a patronizing pat on his shoulder, that this was, for his own good. His son's voice had held a practiced tone of concern, a superficial layer over an underlying impatience Elias had long learned to recognize. Vivian, ever the picture of detached concern, had nodded, her eyes already scanning the pristine, yet impersonal, room, assessing its perceived value, perhaps. "You'll be so comfortable here, Elias," she'd chirped, her voice lacking any genuine warmth, a high-pitched lilt that grated on his nerves. "All your needs met, without any fuss." Elias had seen the glint in her eyes, not of worry for his welfare, but of anticipation for the grand, empty house he was leaving behind, an estate she had long coveted, imagining it finally free of his quiet, watchful presence. He had protested, softly at first, his voice a low plea, then with a tremor of desperation, about wanting to stay in his own space, among his memories. The scent of Anya, the feel of the worn armchair by the fireplace, the familiar creak of the floorboards, these were anchors in his world. His pleas had been met with a dismissive wave from Silas, who had already begun checking his watch, and a saccharine smile from Vivian, who had already begun discussing the logistics of clearing out his belongings with the nursing home attendant as if he were a piece of furniture to be removed. Now, alone in this unfamiliar room, the stark white walls seeming to close in, Elias felt a definitive, irreversible shift occur within him. The well of his patience, once seemingly bottomless, had finally run dry. Years ago, after Anya, his beloved wife, had passed, Elias had found himself adrift in a sea of grief, tethered only by the immense legacy she had left behind. Anya, a visionary with an insatiable curiosity for the future, had founded Anyatech Solutions, from their garage, a modest space that had once housed Elias's gardening tools but became a crucible for innovation. She had built it from nothing, driven by a passion for connecting people and simplifying their lives through technology. The company had grown into a highly successful tech firm that redefined connectivity, touching millions of lives. When she succumbed to a sudden, aggressive illness, the entirety of her shares, her life's work, had passed to Elias. He wasn't a businessman, his strength lay in his quiet support of Anya, his gentle nature, and his boundless capacity for love. He had been her anchor, her sounding board, the one who ensured she ate, slept, and didn't work herself to exhaustion. He had trusted Silas, their only son, to step into Anya's shoes, to run the company with the integrity and foresight his mother had embodied. Elias had retained ownership of all shares, a detail he believed to be a mere formality, a safeguard perhaps, but never something he'd actively wield. He had provided Silas with all the necessary legal documents, granting him full operational control, believing that trust was the bedrock of family, an unspoken contract of mutual respect and care. This trust, however, had been systematically eroded, not by grand, dramatic betrayals at first, but by 1,000 tiny cuts, each one a testament to his family's growing self-absorption. Elias had quietly funded Silas's lavish lifestyle, pouring money into their seemingly insatiable desires, yearning only for their affection and presence, a crumb of genuine connection. He remembered the year Silas had wanted the top-of-the-line German luxury sedan, the one with the custom interior featuring fine leather and a state-of-the-art sound system. Elias had transferred the full amount, a hefty sum of over $120,000, without a second thought, hoping it would bring a genuine, lasting smile to his son's face, a flicker of appreciation. It had, briefly, a fleeting moment of satisfaction, before Silas started complaining about the waiting list for the next, even more exclusive model, dismissing the current one as already outdated. Then there was Vivian's obsession with designer labels. Elias had seen the monthly statements, bills from high-end boutiques like Chanel, Hermes, and Louis Vuitton easily reaching 5 figures, sometimes even 6. He'd covered them all, even the absurdly expensive diamond tennis bracelet Vivian had subtly hinted at for her birthday, a piece costing more than some people's annual salaries, a blatant demand disguised as a casual wish. He had even contributed a substantial sum, nearly $500,000, for the down payment on their sprawling mansion in the exclusive Willow Creek Estates, a house far beyond Silas's executive salary alone, a palace built on Elias's quiet generosity. Their grandchildren, too, were beneficiaries of Elias's silent generosity, though they barely acknowledged him beyond a perfunctory nod. He had ensured they attended the most elite private schools, the tuition bills for which he quietly settled each semester, amounting to tens of thousands annually. He'd provided generous monthly allowances, far exceeding what any teenager needed, and purchased them the latest gadgets, the newest iPhones, top-tier gaming consoles, high-end laptops, all in the hope of earning a few hours of their time, a genuine conversation, or perhaps even a hug. Yet, when he visited, they were often glued to their screens, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of their devices, offering only perfunctory greetings before retreating to their rooms, the expensive gifts already forgotten. Elias would sit in their grand, silent living room, the echo of his own longing, his only companion. The disrespect had become a commonplace occurrence, a steady drumbeat of dismissal. Elias recalled the time he had offered Silas some advice regarding a new tech trend he'd read about, a nascent AI company showing remarkable promise, suggesting Onytech invest in the promising startup. Silas had merely chuckled, a condescending sound that stung. "Father, with all due respect, you're not in touch with the market anymore. We have professionals for this." Elias had swallowed the sting, the bitter taste of being disregarded, remembering Anya's own keen interest in emerging technologies, her foresight that had built their empire. He had seen Silas make questionable decisions, pouring money into vanity projects and neglecting core innovation, but had always held his tongue, hoping his son would mature into his role. Family events became increasingly rare for him, or when they occurred, Elias found himself an outsider looking in. He remembered last Christmas, when Silas and Vivian had flown to Aspen for a ski trip with the grandchildren, leaving Elias alone in his grand house, a pre-cooked meal delivered to his doorstep, a gesture so impersonal it felt like an insult. He had watched their festive social media posts, pictures of snowy slopes and roaring fires, a pang of loneliness sharper than any cold. "We thought you'd prefer a quiet Christmas, Father," Silas had said over the phone, his voice laced with an undeniable dismissiveness. "You always say you like your peace." Elias had wanted to retort that he liked company more, that he liked being part of his family, sharing laughter and warmth, but the words had died in his throat, replaced by a profound weariness. Another incident stood out, his 75th birthday. Elias had subtly expressed a wish for a simple family dinner, a quiet gathering with those he loved. Instead, Vivian had organized a large, ostentatious party at a prestigious country club, filled with their socialite friends and business associates, many of whom Elias didn't know, their faces a blur of polite indifference. He had felt like a prop, wheeled out for display, rather than the guest of honor, a silent ornament in their grand spectacle. Silas had spent the entire evening schmoozing, his back often turned, only occasionally glancing his father's way, a brief, absent-minded smile. "Isn't this wonderful, Father?" Vivian had asked, her eyes gleaming at the perceived social triumph, the envy she imagined in her peers' eyes. "Everyone who's anyone is here." Elias had just nodded, the elaborate cake tasting like ash in his mouth, the saccharine frosting a bitter reminder of their hollow gestures. Their inconsideration extended to his comfort, his physical well-being. Elias had a recurring back issue, a persistent ache that required a specific type of ergonomic chair, a familiar support. When he visited their mansion, he found himself relegated to a stiff dining chair while Silas sprawled on a plush sofa, absorbed in his phone, oblivious. When Elias gently mentioned his discomfort, the slight tremor in his voice, Vivian had merely waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, we can't ruin the aesthetic of the living room with one of those hideous medical chairs, Elias. Just try to sit up straight." It was then he realized his well-being was always secondary to their superficial concerns, their social image, and their unbridled extravagance. He was merely the source of their endless funds, an antiquated burden, a constant inconvenience in their glamorous lives. The yearning for their love had slowly, imperceptibly, transformed into a quiet, simmering resentment, a slow burn that had finally ignited. In the solitude of the nursing home room, the weight of these memories pressed down on Elias, heavy and suffocating. Each one was a fresh sting, a reaffirmation of the truth he had long denied. But unlike before, there was no accompanying wave of sorrow or self-pity, no inclination to wallow in what could have been. Instead, a peculiar resolve began to solidify within him, a cold, hard clarity. He reached for the small, worn leather wallet in his jacket pocket, a wallet Anya had given him decades ago, its leather softened by years of use, a tangible connection to her memory. Inside, he found his phone, an older model, a simple flip phone, but still perfectly functional, reliable, unlike so many other things in his life. He had always kept his important contacts meticulously organized, a habit Anya had instilled in him. His first call was to Mr. Harrison, his longtime personal banker. Mr. Harrison, a man of quiet discretion, known for his meticulousness and unwavering loyalty, answered promptly. "Mr. Thorne, how can I help you?" Elias's voice was steady, calm, almost unnervingly so, a quiet power simmering beneath the surface. "Mr. Harrison, I need to make some immediate changes to my accounts. I want to revoke all existing powers of attorney, effective immediately. And I mean all of them, without exception. Any direct debits, standing orders, or recurring payments associated with the accounts of Silas Thorne or Vivian Thorne are to be cancelled. Furthermore, I want to initiate a full freeze on all accounts linked to them, including any credit lines or joint ventures they may have with me, until further notice. I also need you to prepare a comprehensive report of all transfers, payments, and financial support provided to them over the last 20 years, meticulously documented." Mr. Harrison, usually unflappable, a man who had seen many financial upheavals, paused for a beat longer than usual. "Mr. Thorne, this is quite a drastic step. Are you certain?" His voice held a hint of surprise, a rare tremor. "Absolutely certain, Mr. Harrison," Elias replied, a steely edge to his voice that Mr. Harrison had never heard before, a quiet force of will that left no room for doubt. "This is not a request, it is an instruction. And I expect it to be executed with the utmost urgency and discretion. Should there be any resistance or delay, any hint of complications, I will be moving all my assets to a different institution, and you will be the first to know." "Understood, Mr. Thorne. It will be handled immediately. I will personally oversee it, ensuring every detail is addressed." Mr. Harrison knew Elias Thorne was not a man to make idle threats, nor to act without profound, calculated reason. He sensed an unyielding resolution. Next, Elias dialed a number he hadn't called in years, the direct line to Ms. Eleanor Vance, the head of corporate legal at Onytech Solutions. Eleanor had been Anya's trusted legal counsel from the very early days, a woman of formidable intellect, sharp wit, and unwavering loyalty, a fierce defender of Anya's vision. "Eleanor. It's Elias Thorne." "Elias? It's been too long. Is everything all right?" "You never call this line." Eleanor's voice held genuine concern, a warmth Elias rarely encountered anymore. "Not entirely, Eleanor. But it will be. I need you to confirm something for me. All shares in Onytech Solutions are, and always have been, in my name, correct? 100%, no caveats. Yes, Elias, absolutely. 100%. We hold all the original documentation here, physically in the corporate vault, as per Anya's last wishes and your subsequent confirmations. You are the sole beneficial owner, no one else has a claim. Excellent. Now, I need you to prepare 2 legal documents for me. The first is a notice of termination for Silas Thorne as CEO, effective immediately, citing gross negligence, financial mismanagement, and misappropriation of company resources. The second is a directive to remove Vivian Thorne from all company-related benefits, including any spousal benefits, company car, or any other perks she might be receiving through Silas, effective immediately. I want these prepared and ready for delivery first thing tomorrow morning. I also want a full forensic audit of the company's finances for the past 5 years, focusing specifically on any unusual expenses or transfers related to Silas or Vivian Thorne, no stone unturned. Eleanor was silent for a moment, processing the gravity of Elias's calm, deliberate instructions, the sheer scale of the directive. Elias, this is a significant move. Are you sure you want to discuss the implications? This will send shockwaves. I have considered them at length, Eleanor. For many years, in fact. My decision is final, and it is absolute. I will be in contact to sign the necessary documents first thing tomorrow. Please ensure these directives are executed discreetly but with absolute precision. No leaks, no early warnings, no chance for them to prepare. Understood, Elias. Consider it done. I'll personally ensure everything is in order, and there will be no slip-ups. Eleanor, knowing Elias's quiet strength, felt a tremor of admiration. Anya's husband had finally awakened, and a formidable force he was. As Elias concluded his calls, a strange sense of lightness began to replace the dull ache in his chest. The silence of the room no longer felt empty, but rather, full of possibility, full of a future he could now shape on his own terms. He closed his eyes, a ghost of a smile touching his lips, a genuine one this time. He had spent a lifetime giving, hoping for love and respect in return. Now, he was taking back what was his, not out of malice, but out of a profound sense of self-preservation and a rediscovered understanding of his own worth, a dignity long suppressed. The next morning, the first signs of the impending storm began to rumble in Silas and Vivian's pampered world, small tremors before the earthquake. Vivian was at her favorite high-end coffee shop, the Gilded Bean, sipping an artisanal latte, the foam artfully crafted, when her credit card was inexplicably declined. There must be a mistake, she'd huffed, her face flushing with embarrassment, the line of patrons growing behind her. Run it again, immediately. But the machine kept spitting out the same frustrating message, declined. She quickly called Silas, who was on the golf course, fuming about a missed payment for his private club membership, the one that offered exclusive tea times and bespoke services. It's Elias, I swear it, Silas muttered into the phone, his voice tight with irritation. He must have forgotten to transfer funds again. He's getting so senile, can't remember a thing. They both dismissed it as an old man's error, a minor inconvenience, a temporary lapse, not a deliberate, calculated act. Later that afternoon, a terse email landed in Silas's inbox from their bank, an automated notice about an urgent missed mortgage payment. This sparked a flicker of unease, a fleeting worry, but they quickly rationalized it away as a system glitch, a technical error that would surely resolve itself. They were too consumed by their own importance, too blind to the quiet storm Elias had unleashed, too insulated by their privilege to comprehend its magnitude. The following morning dawned, clear and deceptively peaceful, a perfect day for a monumental shift. Silas Thorne, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, strode into the gleaming lobby of Onytech Solutions, a confident smile on his face, oblivious. He had a board meeting that morning, a routine affair where he would present impressive, if somewhat inflated, quarterly reports, basking in the glow of his perceived success. Vivian, too, arrived, heading directly to her office, a lavishly decorated space she used primarily for personal shopping and social calls, technically listed as head of brand relations, despite having no real responsibilities or contributions. As Silas stepped out of the private elevator on the executive floor, he noticed an unusual gathering, a deviation from the usual quiet hum of corporate activity. Eleanor Vance, the head of legal, stood with Mr. Davies, the head of HR, flanked by two stern-faced security personnel, their expressions unreadable. They were waiting for him. A cold knot formed in Silas's stomach, a premonition of something deeply unsettling. "Silas, may we have a word?" Eleanor's voice was devoid of her usual professional warmth, stripped bare of any pleasantries. Silas's confidence wavered, a slight tremor in his composure. "Is something wrong, Eleanor? I have a board meeting in 10 minutes. "This won't take long," Mr. Davies interjected, his voice equally flat, his gaze unwavering. They led him into the large, glass-walled conference room, a space that normally hosted strategic discussions and celebratory toasts. On the polished table lay a stack of documents, neatly organized. Eleanor picked up the top one, her fingers precise. "Silas, as of this morning, by direct order of the sole beneficial owner of Onutech Solutions, Mr. Elias Thorne, your employment as CEO has been terminated, effective immediately. You are to vacate the premises within the hour." Silas stared, dumbfounded, his mouth slightly agape. "What? That's impossible. I own this company. My mother founded it, and I run it. This is a coup." "No, Silas," Eleanor said, her voice calm but firm, her eyes unyielding, "your mother founded it, and your father owns it. All shares were and always have been in Mr. Elias Thorne's name, unequivocally. You were given operational control, a privilege, a trust, that has now been revoked." She gestured to the pile of documents, their white pages stark against the dark wood of the table. "These are the copies of the share certificates, the notarized declarations, and the termination notice, citing a pattern of financial mismanagement and gross negligence, detailed in the accompanying forensic audit report. Every cent accounted for, every questionable decision documented." Silas felt the blood drain from his face, leaving it ashen. "This is a joke. He's senile. He can't do this. He's lost his mind." "Mr. Thorne is of sound mind, Silas," Mr. Davies interjected, his voice cutting through Silas's rising panic. "His directives are fully legal and binding. Furthermore, you are hereby notified that any and all company-related benefits, including your company car, expense accounts, and your executive severance package, have been rescinded due to the stated cause for termination." And, Eleanor added, her gaze hardening, "Vivian Thorne's position as head of brand relations and all associated benefits have also been terminated immediately." At that very moment, Vivian, alerted by a panicked assistant about an issue with her office access, burst into the conference room, her face a mask of indignation. "What is going on here? My key card isn't working. And someone just told me my car is being repossessed. This is an outrage." Silas, pale and trembling, turned to her, his composure utterly shattered. "Vivian, it's father. He's done this. He's fired me. He says he owns everything." Vivian's face contorted in disbelief, then fury, a raw, ugly emotion. "That old man. He can't. He's just a confused, doddering fool. He needs us. We took care of him." Eleanor stepped forward, her expression unyielding. "Mrs. Thorne, your severance is being prepared, though it will be minimal due to your lack of actual contribution. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings. Security will escort you out." The true horror of the situation began to sink in. Their carefully constructed world, built on Elias's quiet generosity, was crumbling before their eyes, brick by gilded brick. Silas and Vivian, propelled by a desperate, frantic energy, raced to the Northwood Haven Care Facility. They burst into Elias's room, a whirlwind of accusations, pleas, and manufactured tears, a last-ditch effort to manipulate him. "Father! What have you done?" Silas cried, his voice laced with a mixture of rage and terror, his carefully cultivated facade completely gone. "Are you mad? You've destroyed everything. Our lives. Anya Tech. Our future." Vivian collapsed onto a chair, burying her face in her hands, feigning sobs, her shoulders shaking with theatrical grief. "Elias, how could you? After everything we've done for you. We put you in this beautiful place, for your own good. To make sure you were safe." Elias sat calmly in his armchair, a book open in his lap, though he wasn't reading it, merely resting his hands on its pages. He looked at them, his gaze clear and steady, devoid of the hurt and longing they were so accustomed to seeing, the desperate need for their approval. "You put me here," Elias began, his voice quiet but resonant, each word measured and precise, "because I was an inconvenience. Because my needs interfered with your lavish lifestyle. You saw my home, my legacy, as yours to take, rather than mine to live in, mine to cherish." "That's not true," Vivian wailed, lifting her tear-streaked face, her eyes wide with false innocence. "We love you, Father. We always have. This is a mistake. You're confused. You're not thinking straight." "Confused?" Elias echoed, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips, a ghost of amusement. "Was I confused when I paid for your luxurious vacations to the Maldives, Silas? The ones you never invited me on, even when I hinted at wanting to see new places? Was I confused when I settled the bills for your custom-built yacht, Vivian, the one you boasted about to your socialite friends while I ate dinner alone in an empty house?" Silas stammered, his mind racing for an excuse. But that was family money. Your money. We just managed it. We invested it. Managed it? Elias's voice rose slightly, the quiet power in it making them flinch, a sudden crack of thunder. "You squandered it. You treated my inheritance, Anya's legacy, as your personal ATM, an endless wellspring of funds. Did you ever once think to consult me before purchasing that obscenely expensive sports car, Silas, the one you drove for a month and then traded in? Or before Vivian blew another $50,000 on a shopping spree, claiming it was for brand research, as if the company benefited from your personal indulgence? We were doing well, Father." Silas insisted, trying to regain some semblance of control, some shred of his former authority. "Anya Tech was thriving because of my leadership. I grew the company. Anya Tech was thriving because of Anya's vision, Silas, a vision you systematically undermined with your greed and short-sighted decisions, your focus on personal gain over innovation. Do you think I didn't see the wasteful spending, the inflated contracts, the disregard for the very principles Anya built this company on? The neglect of promising research projects? I watched. I always watched. I simply chose not to interfere, hoping you would find your way." He paused, his gaze sweeping over their panicked faces, seeing not remorse but desperate fear. "And when I offered advice, it was met with dismissal, with condescension. When I sought your company, I was deemed a burden, a nuisance. When I expressed a simple wish for a quiet birthday, I was paraded as a trophy. You excluded me, you disrespected me, and finally, you cast me aside like an old, useless relic, expecting me to fade away quietly." Vivian, seeing her usual manipulative tactics failing, shifted to raw desperation. "But what about the grandchildren? Your legacy? They'll have nothing. You're ruining their lives." "My grandchildren," Elias said, his voice laced with a chilling finality, a resolution that cut deeper than any anger, "have been raised to believe that everything is owed to them. They have been given every material comfort, yet they could not spare a single hour for their grandfather, for the man who paid for it all. If they learn the value of hard work and self-reliance now, if they understand what true struggle is, perhaps it is the greatest gift I could ever give them, a lesson I wish I had taught them sooner. Silas, seeing the futility, resorted to threats, a last, pathetic attempt at intimidation. If you do this, Father, we'll sue. We'll make sure your name is dragged through the mud. The press will have a field day. Everyone will know what you've done. Elias chuckled, a dry, humorless sound, devoid of fear. Go ahead, Silas. Tell the world how you, the supposed brilliant CEO, were fired by your senile old father, who still owns the entire company. Tell them how you forced him into a nursing home, only to discover he still held all the power. I assure you, the truth will be far more damning for you than for me. You will be a laughingstock. He stood up, his posture surprisingly straight, his eyes gleaming with a newfound strength, a quiet power that radiated from him. My decision is final. You have reaped what you have sown. Now, leave. I have no more to say to either of you. Silas and Vivian, defeated, their faces a mixture of shock, rage, and a dawning, terrible fear, stumbled out of the room. As the door clicked shut behind them, a wave of immense relief washed over Elias. The air in the room suddenly felt lighter, cleaner, as if a great weight had been lifted. He took a deep, liberating breath. The silent, heavy burden he had carried for years, the desperate hope for affection that had always been met with cold indifference, had finally been lifted. He was free. Silas and Vivian returned to their mansion, the once gleaming symbol of their success, now felt like a gilded cage rapidly losing its luster, its walls closing in. The reality of their situation descended upon them like a suffocating blanket. The mortgage company called, demanding immediate payment, threatening foreclosure. Their credit cards, once limitless, were now frozen, useless plastic. Within days, the luxury cars Elias had financed for them, the sleek German sedan, Vivian's bespoke convertible, were repossessed, their flashy presence replaced by empty spaces in the driveway. The shock of having to hail a taxi, or worse, take public transport, was a profound humiliation for them, a stark reminder of their lost status. Vivian's designer wardrobe, once a source of pride and envy, seemed to mock her as she realized she couldn't afford to replace a single item, let alone buy new ones. Her regular spa appointments and expensive lunches with her socialite friends ceased abruptly. The invitations to exclusive parties and charity galas stopped coming, their names removed from guest lists. Their friends, fair-weather companions who had flocked to their lavish lifestyle, evaporated, leaving them isolated in their rapidly crumbling world. The public humiliation was swift and brutal, whispers followed them, pointed looks, and outright pity disguised as concern, which was almost worse. Silas, once a confident figure in the business world, found himself unemployable, his reputation in tatters, his name synonymous with disgrace. Vivian's attempts to leverage her connections proved futile, no one wanted to be associated with the Thorne family scandal, or with those who had fallen from grace so dramatically. They were left with an extravagant house they couldn't afford and a social circle that had vanished. Their panic was a living, breathing entity, fueling frantic, futile attempts to salvage their situation. They considered selling the house, but the market was slow, and their pride prevented them from accepting the low offers, clinging to a dying dream. They argued constantly, blaming each other for their predicament, their fragile marriage cracking under the intense pressure of financial ruin and social ostracism, their love, if it had ever existed, dissolving into mutual resentment. Meanwhile, Elias, having shed the weight of decades of emotional servitude, felt a profound sense of rejuvenation, a lightness in his step, a clarity in his mind. The day after his confrontation with Silas and Vivian, he called an old college friend, Dr. Alastair Finch, a retired professor of history, whom he hadn't spoken to in years. They hadn't spoken in years, but Alastair's voice, full of genuine warmth, was like a balm, a comforting echo from a kinder past. They spoke for hours, reminiscing about their youthful adventures, laughing about shared memories, and planning a dinner that very week. Elias also contacted a travel agent, booking a 2-month trip through Europe, something Anya had always dreamed of but they never had the time for, always too busy building the company, too focused on the future. He began exploring new hobbies within the care facility, joining a painting class, his brushstrokes hesitant at first, then more confident, and a book club, rediscovering the joy of intellectual conversation. The nursing home, once a symbol of his abandonment, had become a haven of peace, a place where he could finally prioritize himself, a sanctuary. He wasn't isolated, he was liberated, surrounded by compassionate staff and fellow residents who treated him with dignity and respect, a stark contrast to his own family. Months later, the crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and a quiet sense of renewal. Elias Thorne was no longer at Northwood Haven. He had moved into a charming, tastefully decorated condominium in a vibrant, walkable neighborhood, a place he had personally chosen and furnished, filled with his own memories and new acquisitions. He spent his days indulging in passions long dormant. He joined a local photography club, capturing the beauty of the city parks and the intricate details of nature, seeing the world with fresh eyes. He frequented art galleries, attended classical music concerts, and spent hours in quaint bookstores, rediscovering the joy of reading for pleasure, not just for information. He had hired a part-time assistant to help with household tasks and manage his appointments, allowing him to truly enjoy his newfound freedom, his days his own. He had even started a small charity foundation in Anya's name, dedicated to supporting young female entrepreneurs, using a portion of his vast wealth for a purpose that truly mattered, a legacy of empowerment. He looked healthier, his eyes bright with a spark that had been absent for years, and his posture, once slightly stooped by the weight of his burdens, was now erect and confident. He was truly living, savoring every moment, knowing that his actions had not only freed himself but had also honored Anya's legacy, protecting it from those who would exploit it. As for Silas and Vivian, their world had been irrevocably altered. Stripped of their inherited wealth and accustomed privileges, they were forced to confront the harsh realities of life without a safety net, without Elias's bottomless purse. Silas, after numerous failed attempts to secure another executive position, his reputation preceding him, eventually found work as a low-level sales manager for a struggling firm, a far cry from his former CEO status. Vivian, unable to maintain her luxurious lifestyle, took a job in retail, selling the very designer clothes she once bought without a second thought, the irony not lost on her, though she rarely admitted it. Their mansion, eventually foreclosed, was replaced by a modest apartment in a less desirable part of town, their grand life reduced to cramped quarters. They struggled to pay bills, learned to cook their own meals, and even took public transport, experiencing the challenges of everyday life they had so long shielded themselves from. Their children, forced to leave their elite private schools, enrolled in public institutions, grappling with a stark new reality, a future they had never envisioned. The lesson was brutal, but necessary. True wealth lies not in material possessions or social standing, but in integrity, self-reliance, and genuine human connection. Love and respect, Elias had learned, could never be bought with endless checks and sacrificed dreams. They had to be earned, cherished, and reciprocated. And sometimes, the greatest act of love and loyalty one can give is to oneself, by finally choosing freedom over the chains of unrequited affection and entitlement. We hope you found justice in Elias's story, a powerful reminder that true strength often lies dormant until pushed to its limits. If you enjoyed this journey of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate freedom, you'll find many more compelling tales of life lessons and unexpected turns right here on our channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next video. We love hearing from you. Tell us in the comments below, have you ever witnessed or experienced such profound ingratitude? What would you have done if you were in Elias's position? Share your thoughts below.